As the Los Angeles fires come to an end, wildfires are a very present topic in the lives of many Californians. In a span of a couple weeks, hundreds of thousands of people were evacuated, over 16,000 structures were destroyed, and many more were left heartbroken and devastated. This isn't the first time this has happened either. In just the past 5 years, over 8,000 wildfires have burned, varying in intensity and size, demanding the state to pay billions of dollars in damage and resources. When you think about the people affected by these wildfires, you normally think of families and individuals who lost their homes, businesses, or even their own lives due to the wildfires. But what about the people inside of the flame, who bring the fire to an end? How do the lives of the firefighters change going into these fires constantly? How exactly are the firefighters affected?
Started when I was 15 as a fire explorer. So if you count all those years, it's been 39 now.
Sean Norman, recently retired from CAL Fire, has been a firefighter for 39 years throughout the state of California. During his time on the job, he has progressed through the rankings and has gone through a variety of positions in the fire service.
I got my first actual paycheck when I was 16 for Valley Fire Department. They hired explorers and we went and painted fire hydrants and did stuff, and we got to ride along. In 1990 for Sonoma Fire as a part-time guy on the ambulance. I got hired with CAL Fire in 1993 and then I retired from CAL Fire last year. So I did a little over 30 years with CAL Fire before I retired.
Norman wanted to be a firefighter ever since he was a child, and his family knew he would end up in that position.
My mom would tell you that I was that kid, like when I was 5, that wanted to be a firefighter and just never really changed.
His excitement for the job first came when he visited his grandmother at work, as she was in the arson department in San Francisco as a secretary.
My grandmother had worked at the arson department as a secretary, and I remember going and visiting her at San Francisco Fire, actually, seeing all the guys in their uniforms. And back then, they wore their Class A hats.
Norman knew he always wanted to become a fireman, loving the idea of helping people, but his motivation for the job wasn't always the same. As he continued through his career, the passion for the job became more refined and specific to helping people and bettering of others and himself.
It changes, obviously, as you go through the career, but when I was little, it was just the whole big red fire truck and then based on what I just did and then what I've always, all the crazy things I've been involved in, the job has, all the things I thought I'd be doing, I did, and then I went into way more things that I ever thought I'd be involved in.
Over time, it went from being the status of the position and the adrenaline grab of the job to the goal to become a better firefighter himself and to be responsible in solving the substantial problems that come about in the job.
So when you're young, it is certainly about the, and I'm going to use the word adrenaline, but it's the excitement. You're doing things, especially, where I started in a small town. You kind of become people know you're a firefighter, right? And it's a respected profession, right? So people are like, oh, wow, that's really cool. And then it changes. And then for me, it turned into that personal goal of being really good. And then it turned into, as a captain, leading my troops and teaching them how to be good. And then as a chief officer, it was putting it all together. So it wasn't just the station, but the entire, group of people. And then it turned into solving really big problems, right? Go back to that very first day and it was, running red lights and a big red fire truck and spraying water on stuff. And then it turned into, how do I fix huge problems?
Being a firefighter, you accept the fact that you'll see things in your everyday life that most people won't see in their whole entire lifetime. Things that aren't even natural for the human body to see constantly.
When I first started in 1986, I think it was the first meeting I went to as an explorer, they sat us down and told us, you're going to see some really bad things, and if you can't handle it, you should probably quit right now. It's not for you. It is not normal to see the amount of things that we see, the level of destruction.
Norman, along with others, knew that he'd be expected to put 100% of his dedication and effort into every single call. He knew he was going to be gone from his family for long periods of time, being gone even up to 59 days at one point. He knew it was going to be hard physically and mentally, but he continued on anyway. Even knowing all of this and accepting it, it didn't make the job any less taxing on himself.
The things that you see, some of them, last forever. They don't ever go away.
Right.
I think the other challenge is, when I would be gone on some of these fires, and the job that I did required me to operate at a really high level, mentally, and emotionally, right? So I had to be locked in. I would be the operations section chief on a fire where maybe there were 4,000 people working underneath me.
Right.
And I had to be locked in and making these decisions about, I was making the best of a series of really bad options. And then you come home and then somehow I've got to decelerate and then go back to just being a normal guy.
Thankfully for Norman, he didn't only have a support system that was there for him all the time, but one that helped him get over his boundaries in his mind and keep him present in the moment. He had his family.
Before I had my kids, there was probably a 24-hour period where in my mind, I refer to it as the ghost period. And I was just home, but I was a shell. I was not there.
Right.
And then, you have kids, and, when your kids are little, they don't understand that. And so they want horsey rides, and they want to snuggle, and they want you to read them books, and they want to go out and play baseball. Right. And you're thinking to yourself, I just need to sit here on this couch and do nothing, and process what I just went through. And in a weird way, that having my kids broke those walls down and forced me to get out of that ghost period and be a person again.
In just a singular day of work, a firefighter can go on an average of 33 calls, all different in their situations and intensities. Anything can be seen on these calls, good and bad, heartbreaking and heartwarming.
I've had some horrendous calls, just, single, a family that was sleeping with their 9-week-old baby in the bed, slept on top of it and killed the baby. But, then at the same time, the campfire killed 85 people, and I spent, 2.5 weeks recovering all their human remains. On a call where a firefighter died a couple times. I had to do CPR on 2 fellow firefighters, one who ended up surviving, one who did not.
Though many of the calls that Sean Norman and other firefighters go on are devastating, not all of them are bad. Some of them are good. And some of them are the most memorable calls of them all, and show the true reason Norman and many others joined the fire department.
Some of the best calls are some of the worst calls, the most memorable. When you deliver a baby, or when you actually get to save a life and you see it happen and the family's so happy and they come back and tell you, you saved my kid's life. Or, so I've had several of those where the people have come back. I had a couple kids. I was teaching a class at the high school, and this girl was in there, and I noticed her face looked like something had happened to her. And she walked up to me after the class and said, "Do you remember me?" And I was like, "No." And she started telling me her story, and I knew immediately who she was. She was riding at her friend's house, and they had one of those little, a mini bike. She had never ridden a motorcycle in her life, and got on it and pressed, did the throttle, and shot down the driveway out into the street, and a car was coming to hit her. And when she turned and looked at the car, it hit her face. I was waiting in the helicopter, don't hear anything about it. And then 8-9 years later, she remembered me.